Good evening. Welcome and thank you for being with us tonight, Wednesday, September 16, Candidate Forum for Mayor of American Canyon. I am Yolanda Chambran from the League of Women Voters of Napa County. The League of Women Voters is a trusted membership organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. We are nonpartisan and do not endorse or oppose candidates or political parties. The League does participate in issue advocacy and voter education. If you would like to join us in our work, please see our website, lwvnapa.com, for membership information and much more. Tonight, we are here to educate Napa County voters by giving you the opportunity to hear from the candidates for this race. While we usually provide in-person forums due to COVID-19 restrictions, we are coming to you tonight by a Zoom webinar. We are recording this forum and it will be posted on YouTube, our LWV website, Facebook, and on our other social media platforms. Per FCC rules, no other recording of this forum or excerpts from the LWV recording are allowed. The League encourages civil discourse and the candidates have all agreed to participate under guidelines set for this forum. The candidates have agreed to confine their remarks to their qualifications and issues and not to resort to defamatory remarks about the other candidates. Microphones and video are off for everyone except the candidates and the LWV forum team. There is no chat or Q&A capability for this session. The questions for this forum have been solicited in advance from the community and from our LWV members and were collected over email. We had a LWV team screen the question to avoid duplication and anything inappropriate. The candidates have not seen the questions in advance. The number of questions we will ask depends on the time available. Our LWV League team helping with this forum tonight are timekeeper Linda Dideker Yolo. Our co-host and moderator is Vida Flores. I will now turn the evening over to Vida.
Good evening. I'm pleased to be here this evening to join you. I'm going to ask our team to mute their microphones. Yolanda, Bernie, please mute your microphones. Thank you. We'll go ahead and start off our evening, and we will start our questions in alphabetical order. So the first question will go to Mr. Garcia, candidate Garcia. Why are you the best candidate for mayor, and what qualifications do you bring to this position? You have 1.5 minutes to answer.
Thank you for the question. It's been my privilege and honor to be mayor of American Canyon for 14 years. In that length of time, I've worked with on many policy committees of interest that has a lot to do with the betterment of communities. League of California Cities, I serve on the Governance Transparency Labor Relations Committee. I'm also a member of the, and have past chair of the Napa Valley Transportation Authority. Work on different policy committees related to transportation in the Bay Area and housing. The water supply is also another big issue that I've dealt with in my career. Securing 6,000 acre feet at Sites Reservoir was a policy decision that came forward with the city council, and we approved that. My connection largely is throughout the community. We're a very diverse community, and my wife and I have contacts throughout the community. You think of American Canyon, 3/4 of the population are people of color. There are 38 different languages spoken in the city. Every major faith in the world is represented in this city. So my social contacts out there have given me a lot to listen to, learn, and be able to communicate forward in terms of policy and action by the council. I'm active with Community Action Napa Valley, that's the food bank. COAD, it's just community organizations assisting in disasters. That's all the family services network in the county, currently dealing very much with the pandemic issues and the fire issues, and making sure that we have food access and housing for families. I'm also part of the other Valley organizations like the Latino Napa County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, American Canyon Chamber of Commerce, and I think that's my time.
Thank you very much. Can you see the timekeeper from where you're sitting?
Yes, I can. I saw a red card.
Okay, that sounds perfect.
Does that the red card says it's over, right?
The red card says it's
Wrap
over.
it up. Okay.
Okay, Mr. Joseph.
Yes, well, again, thank you for hosting this event, and I'm happy to be here. Why am I the best candidate? What are my qualifications? I think it's predominantly my career background. I have a degree in public administration and over 30 years experience in local government, particularly in finance and management. I was the finance director in 3 different cities, including American Canyon, as well as the city manager in American Canyon. And in addition to that technical experience, my wife and I have been here over 26 years, very active in the community, from the Arts Council, Arts Foundation rather, to Relay for Life, to the Quannies of American Canyon. I've also served on boards such as the Vine Trail and the Arts Council Napa Valley. And the last 10 years I've been on the City Council. So I do believe that my breadth of experience technically and community is what makes me the most qualified candidate. But beyond that, I also think that it's my view of the role of mayor, what I think the mayor's job should be. I believe it should play a leadership role in the community and be forward-looking, anticipating problems and avoiding them. It should be focused on the important issues and not the urgent ones. And lastly, the mayor should be offering solutions so that we can move forward in this community. And I hope for the rest of this hour, we'll have an opportunity to go into more details in that regard. But those are the reasons: my technical experience and background and my community commitment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will alternate the answers to our questions. So the next question will be posed towards Mr. Joseph to answer first. And the question is, American Canyon is working on its 20-year general plan. What specific issues would you like to see addressed?
Well, yes, I think we've actually been spending almost 20 years trying to get the general plan updated. There's been a lot of starts and stops. For me, I think the most important issue is to have a good understanding of what we want to be when we're built out. We just actually had an interesting discussion on that last night. I think there's a continuum from being a bedroom community to being a city-centric one. And for me, the issue is to say, where do we want to be on that? And we need to look at measures like the jobs housing balance. How many people can live and work here in American Canyon? Issues like how long do you have to take to commute from wherever you are to work? But also exploring the climate change and the environmental impacts and the fiscal impacts of what all of our land use plans are. So for me, the general plan should be looking at a way in which we kind of identify what we want to look like when we're built out, and then make sure that that is financially sustainable as well as environmentally sustainable. And like I said, for me, the most important issue is to be a full community, one that can provide work opportunities, living opportunities, and outdoor recreational opportunities. That's what I'd like to see our general plan update develop.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia.
Yes, well, the general plan is a bit behind getting updated, but we will work on it with due diligence. It's a process for me that involves community's input. And what does community want? What does the business community want? What do they need? How do we bring those pieces together with a vision of where we want to go from here? That's our roadmap to the future. But we don't stand alone in American Canyon because a lot of things are regional around us. The economy, for example, is a regional issue. Traffic is a regional issue. How we address these issues with respect to what we design in the general plan goes forward to making this a better place to live. How do we market American Canyon to be able to bring the economy up? That we need to know what the assets we have in this city to be able to provide for future development, employment, for housing, for recreation and entertainment of the citizens who live here. This is a very dynamic community. A lot has happened. You know, we doubled in population in 10 years. And now we're into the 2020 and census is coming in, and we will be looking again at who we are and what we want to be. I think starts with a conversation from the community and all the interested parties in it. And from that, you develop a plan for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And if my background reads a different day, that's because I'm pinch hitting tonight. So it is the September 16th. This is the American Canyon Mayoral Candidate Forum. So we'll move forward. Question number 3 to Mr. Garcia. And that question is, COVID-19 fires and now smoke have had a big hit on our local economy. What actions will you take to help American Canyon's economic recovery?
Well, I mentioned part of that with the general plan, with our considerations with that. No, we need to reach out to our business community. A lot have been impacted rather severely by it. And that's a conversation with what we can do to modify. It involves some creativity in terms of how we address things. For example, the restaurants, they now have outdoor dining. That was something in the parklets. And the city eased restrictions on that or allowed them to do that to build up their businesses again. I think a lot of it is dealing also with the employment possibility as well. Here's a thought that came up with the Green Island Industrial District. The owners out there get together on a quarterly basis. They have a difficulty recruiting and retaining employees. They want a child care center. That's a very creative idea. And they wanted to, the conversation continues within the city about a location for that, how that might happen. I was a nurse recruiter and assistant director of nurses at Napa State Hospital. And we put the first child care center for a hospital in Napa County on campus. And the staffing levels improved dramatically. So it's creative thinking like that. What are the ideas out there? What are best practices that we need to pursue? How do we solve this problem together? It's a global issue throughout the county, and it's far beyond our borders. So I would stay tuned to what other communities are doing. Learn from them. They can learn from us. Share information. That's how we grow our way out of this situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Joseph, back to you.
Yes. I can't even begin to explain how horrific all of these crises have been and hitting back to back between COVID, fire, and air pollution. I think it reflects a couple of things. Number one, I think it demonstrates that climate change is real. And particularly as it relates to the fires, this is what climate change looks like here on the west side, on the west states. So I think what we have to do is develop plans to address climate change. And certainly locally, that would involve moving more towards electric vehicles and more towards renewable energy. But also in terms of dealing with symptoms. One of the things I've advocated is that we need to fill or create 3 new firefighter positions, partly for the sake of firefighter safety, but also so that we have the capacity to help out when these fires happen and we can send our firefighters to help and mutual aid. Beyond that, at the local personal level, when it hit, COVID was the original problem. I helped out with Kiwanis. They have a food bank program, and I helped shop, bag food, distribute food, and as the treasurer of Kiwanis, did all the financial transactions. I worked with the chamber and developed the Back to the Table program, where when in the beginning, when there was the opportunity for the restaurants to reopen, to work with them. And then lastly, just yesterday, I announced as part of the campaign, I'm donating $6,000 to the Napa Valley Community Foundation, to our local CERT program, to COED, and to the Kiwanis, all for disaster relief in an attempt to do my part towards helping out.
Thank you. Mr. Joseph, this question is for you. What are your thoughts about allowing cannabis indoor grow houses and cannabis sales in American Canyon?
Indoor grow in houses, that is? The council addressed this some 2 years ago, and I think we worked out a very good compromise. We basically said that we would allow for indoor cultivation in our industrial park area, but no indoor or no outdoor cultivation in residential areas. And I think that was the right move. We also didn't allow for retail dispensaries. Part of that was because we did an extensive survey and found out our community was more or less divided on the issue. And so we came up with a strategy that acknowledged the potential economic opportunities of cannabis in our industrial part, but thought it might be a little too early on the retail end. So for me, that compromise is the one that is the approach we should take, and I'm proud that we could craft it. Down the road, I think this is the kind of thing where values and community values will change over time. And, you know, I certainly believe that there may come a point where a retail dispensary might happen, but not immediately. I think for now, we want to focus on that industrial capacity and then see where it takes us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Garcia? Oh,
Yes, we had a lot of community meetings on this issue. It was the initiative passed, the statewide initiative passed in American Canyon, I think by about something like 60%. But the conversation got down to the reality of what does this mean to American Canyon residents. There was a big pushback on where the location might be. So we were able to draw a map and put it out on the industrial area. It's very distant from anything like schools or housing. That was the big issue with it. The permit allows for industrial growing inside the building, processing, sales from those areas to other vendors, but doesn't allow for retail inside of town. Well, that was something that people were very much opposed to, or outdoor grow was another one that was very opposed in those town meetings. So we were able to craft something that is meets the expectation to the spirit of that initiative and satisfies American Canyon. I think at some point, as this become a more of a normal type of a product that people experience at their choice, then we may again revisit that and look at the retail brick and mortar sales in town. But it's not going to happen in the foreseeable future. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Garcia. This next question is for you. What steps will you take to ease traffic congestion through American Canyon?
Well, that's very good. Actually, I serve on the Napa Valley Transportation Authority, and we have conversations about planning ahead. We have a highway plan development area through the middle of town, which addresses a lot of the highway improvement on it. But that's Caltrans project, and that takes a great deal of time. We've only been dealing with this for well over 10 years or longer. But an opportunity presents itself. Devlin Road, which cuts through the industrial area in the county and into American Canyon, can connect the last piece to Green Island Road, which gives you an alternate route on the west side of the city. We just received $4.2 million from Caltrans Commission for that project. On the eastern side, Newell Drive, which fronts the high school, to continue that up, and as the project develops, carry it over to Green Island Road on the west side of the highway. Future vision is also taking it all the way up to South Cali Road. So the idea, what's in control of the city and the county, is the local streets, the local roads, the alternate routes. And by connecting those, we will relieve traffic congestion. If there's an accident north of the city before the first light, you're stuck. There's no alternate route. So this will, I think, relieve a lot of the traffic congestion on the highway.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph.
Yes, basically the response is more or less the same, but with a little more of a different perspective and maybe some detail. Traffic has been the #1 issue for me. It's the whole reason why I ran 10 years ago. And for me, I think it also reflects the ability to anticipate problems and try to avoid them by anticipating them and dealing with them early. So yes, that parallel road concept of the Newell extension on the east side, Devlin and Commerce on the west side, as well as improvements to the 29 corridor, they're all the critical elements of providing flexibility as well as additional capacity. But the real issue is, how do you make it all happen? The Newell extension, for example, back in 2015, we had the opportunity to link it to the Watson Ranch project and require the development to build the road, not necessarily pay for it, but make sure the road was built. We missed that opportunity. I was the only council person saying this is what we should do. And unfortunately, I was the only person and it didn't prevail. So now we have to figure out how we're going to deal with it. And my proposal is to work with the property owners who want access and will build the road quickly and efficiently, and then work with the county in terms of coming up with the shared cost for financing it. I believe that will expedite the construction much faster than if we rely on doing it as a government project. The 29 corridor, again, as Leon pointed out, we are working with Caltrans to make improvements to the transit, to intersections, and to provide sidewalks and pathways on there. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 7 will be, well, question 6 will be directed at Mr. Joseph. What are the current barriers to complete the Watson Ranch project? What would you do to move the project forward?
Well, we did approve the plan. We did approve a development agreement. So to some extent, the monkey is on the developer's back right now. But to be honest with you, looking at the development and as city manager, I had a lot of experience building much of the city. So I do know the biggest problem with the Watson Ranch project right now is access. And that is specifically on the Rio Del Mar extension. Until that road is built from 29 all the way over to Newell, you aren't going to be able to develop the ruins. You aren't going to be able to build the homes. And the problem with Rio Del Mar is the railroad crossing. Right now, the developer is probably going to have to build underneath the track, which may add $20 to $25 million to the cost of the project. That is a huge constraint. I believe at the time, and I still believe, the most important approach is to basically fight with the Public Utilities Commission to secure an at-grade crossing. There's little or no rail action in that section. There are ways to mitigate it. Particularly the Newell extension will have a grade separated crossing. And so I believe we should fight to get the at-grade crossing so that you can build the Rio Del Mar extension so that the developer can then move forward and make Watson Ranch happen. Unless that happens, frankly, we're not going to see a lot of activity except some easy stuff around the south end, some housing, but not the project that we all envision. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Garcia, same question.
Yes, one of the, Mark covered it rather completely from council's perspective, what we've worked on. I think a piece that's very important also is to ensure that the school district is going to build a school. What draws families to American Canyon, it's a safe community. It's closer proximity to work for a lot of folks because spouses travel in different directions, north of the valley or down to the Bay Area or east of Sacramento. But the school is what brings the family here. Many of them have moved from adjacent communities into American Canyon because of what we provide in that area. The infrastructure within the ranch, certainly access across from Rio Del Mar, that has to be resolved. And that's going to be an expensive proposition regardless, but that was all part of the agreement that we worked out with the developer. And with respect to the Newell extension, we have an agreement with the developer, and I think we need to work with that. That's what we agreed upon. If there's an opportunity to modify that, I don't know, because the developer hasn't been on the table with us about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Garcia, this question is for you first. The state mandated arena or regional housing needs allocation is in the formative stages for period 2023 to 2031. What will you do to meet these allocations in American Canyon, and what will you do to meet the low-income housing needs?
Well, that's actually part of our plan. I sit on the Association of Bay Area Governments Executive Board. We're the ones who parse out the arena allocations, regional housing needs assessment allocation to the jurisdictions. It's for all 9 counties and 101 cities. And frankly, in Napa County, American Canyon is a spot that actually has met much of its arena allocations over time and has assured affordable housing. We completed the Valley View project, which is a 70 unit for former homeless people through a satellite housing authority, SAHA. They're the manager of it. And 30 of the units are for veterans who were formerly homeless. It's an incredible project. I mean, we move forward with it. We're building housing stock, and we recognize our responsibility and the importance of having it for lower income families. And we have, so yeah, we work with that in jurisdictions north of us. Oftentimes they're looking to us to help them out with allocations because sometimes we build more than we actually need.
Thank you. Mr. Joseph?
Yes, I think moving forward to the next RENA allocation, we're actually in a pretty good position for a couple of reasons. One, although our numbers increased significantly, they were nowhere near as dramatic percentage-wise as the rest of the jurisdictions in the county. And secondly, Watson Ranch, for example, and the 29 corridor provide quite a few potential housing units, so that not only can we meet our expectations for the next cycle, we're in a position to work with other jurisdictions, namely the county, in terms of negotiating something. We can help them with their numbers, but getting back to what I said earlier about the Newell extension, perhaps the county can help us finance the extension itself. And so I think in that regard, we're in a good position to meet our expectations as well as to leverage our good fortune to make things better for our community. Specifically on affordable housing, there's a number of things that I proposed. I advocated that we increase the requirement on any new project from 10% affordability and pushed it up to 15%, which dramatically improves the stock. I've also been an advocate of some of the what's known as accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units, trying to get grant funds to assist in the construction in exchange for locking in lower rates. I think we should consider duplexes and triplexes in our single family areas. And lastly, we should explore condos and townhouses as an opportunity to provide higher density on the one hand, but home ownership on the other.
Thank you. The next question for Mr. Joseph is, the state mandated RENA or regional housing needs allocation is in the formative stages for period 2023 to
I
31.
think that was the last question.
I think it was too.
Yeah, I'll be able to say it probably better the second time, but
Give me a shot and I'll fill in more detail.
yeah.
Okay, let's make a switch to Lavco. How can American Canyon develop without increasing its water use? What is your opinion about Lavco's municipal service review that recommends American Canyon become part of a county-wide wastewater agency?
Well, first of all, I think we need to be clear. We actually are in very good shape relative to water supply. We have the state water project that gives us 5,200 acre feet technically, but as a practical matter, more like around 3,500 acre feet. We have the Sites Reservoir, as Leon pointed out earlier, which is another 4,000 acre feet. And then we also have 2,000 acre feet of treated water that we have the rights to from the city of Vallejo. So we do have a fair amount of capacity because right now we're only using around 3,000 acre feet. So we have water supply as a capacity. We just had some discussions about Lavco's study. I don't object to looking at things regionally, but I think American Canyon and maybe Napa City are large enough that we can be a viable standalone water agency. So I'm not a big fan of consolidating and abdicating any kind of control over that. We spent a lot of time and money investing in our utilities, and I'd rather not just give that away. More specifically, there are some technical issues, some confusion over our water boundaries. When we incorporated with the boundary of the water district, and now there seems to be some confusion over that report as to what those boundaries are today. So specifically, I have some serious concerns with the report, more for technical reasons. And like I said, I think we're a big enough water agency, we should stand alone. Help with others, but stand alone. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Garcia?
Yes, that boundary issue is still not been resolved from the city's perspective. I think we need to continue that conversation. But with respect to water conservation, we had a cash for grant program during the drought, saved enough water for 273 houses. We had a 140 unit apartment complex built. Question was, where's the water coming from? Well, there are offsets. All the toilets in that apartment complex are double pronged, they're on recycled water. In addition, they brought over the purple pipe over the east side, took all the landscaping off of potable water, put it on recycled water. The main water line into town was leaking something horrendous. It was lined. to the tune of about $1 million. And Coca-Cola was wanting to up their allotment. So the offset was they paid for that process. So there's creative ways of doing this. Many of them are one-time, yes, but on a continuing basis, Watson Ranch, the landscaping in the front will be drought-tolerant landscaping only. That's another way of preserving our water supply, using it more efficiently. And those were some things we accomplished that I don't know have been done anywhere else.
Thank you. Mr. Garcia, how do you plan to work with the Napa Valley Unified School District to get American Canyon's share of bond dollars in lieu of a middle school?
Yes, that conversation is going on. As you can imagine, that was a great disappointment to local residents. The fact that the bond measure was supposed to build a new middle school. But the data reflects a declining population in the school district. And likewise, American Canyon, a much younger population as the district identifies in their demographics, is aging out. So what we're going to work with the school district on is the improvements needed in some of the aging buildings. You know, the additions to the middle school have been discussed. The principal of the school was in favor of that. He said it could work. We'll wait and see in terms of what that plan looks like when it rolls out. I would certainly encourage active community participation in it, much as we had during the whole discussion around cancellation of the new middle school. And as I say, the issue may come up again with the Watson Ranch and the school property there for what they're going to build. So it needs to meet the needs of American Canyon residents, and we need to be present in that discussion. And I would invite the school board, as they do maybe once a year, to come down and be more present in American Canyon, to hear from the residents about their needs and what we do going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Joseph?
Yes, I'm reminded years ago as a city manager, one of the first projects I worked on was getting our first middle school built. And we worked with the superintendent at the time, David Brown, and I think we got awards for partnerships because they built the middle school. We needed a swimming pool and a community center, and we worked together and came up with something better than either one of us could have done alone. Somewhere over the last 25 years, that partnership has fallen apart. And now we feel as if we were basically, well, I'll be harsh, I'll say betrayed over the bond issue. That being said, we need to make sure that some of those proceeds go towards fixing up Donaldson Elementary and to upgrade our initial middle school. But beyond that, I think the city has some bargaining chips in this arrangement. We have land use control, frankly, and so we can make sure that all the parcels that are school sites are zoned for public purpose so that they're only good for public purpose. And if the school districts choose not to build, they're still going to have to sit down and talk to us if they want to do anything with that land. So I do believe we have some leverage. It is unfortunate that we would have to be so confrontational, but that seems to be where we're at right now with the school district. If I were elected mayor, the first thing I would do is sit down with the school district, either the superintendent or a trustee, and try to build a relationship based on facts and understanding our needs and issues, and yet understanding the district's financials.
Thank you very much. Mr. Joseph, you'll start with this question. What climate change actions would you prioritize for American Canyon?
Thank you. First of all, just by way of background, I'm the city's representative on the countywide Climate Action Committee, and I've been endorsed by Chris Benz and Jim Wilson of the Napa Climate Now organization. So I think I have some good credentials in that arena. First and foremost, as I mentioned earlier, I think we need to adopt a policy of shifting from fossil fuel vehicles to electric vehicles and as much renewable energy as we can. So we need to encourage solar on the roof with battery storage backup. We should consider the idea of requiring all new development to have a renewable energy component. We certainly need to increase the electric vehicle charging stations. We need to look at electrifying our own fleet, replacing gas-powered leaf blowers and trimmers with electric, basically lead by example. We also need to explore the possibility of all electric houses, which It seems a little counterintuitive. There's a lot of people who might not be ready for that, but I think we need to start that dialogue and talk about it and show some of the benefits that could come from that. So these are just some of the ways. The last thing, as I mentioned earlier, we need to add some firefighters because we may not solve climate action, but we can deal with the symptoms. And that'll help us in response to some of these horrific wildfires. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Garcia?
Yes, I think solar ready construction and encouragement of solar. There may be some way to incentivize that. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of programs coming forward where there's grants available for that type of construction as well. And that would apply to residential and industrial as well. We have a great opportunity here for solar farm that's actually out in the county, up next to Highway 80. That's about 20 acres that they put in, and we were active with them. We're working with a company that's going to be looking at other solar possibilities within American Canyon. Napa Valley Transportation Authority, well, we're adjacent to that. We're representatives on that. Moving to electric fleets with buses. So I think as much opportunity there as we can with reducing carbon fuel and moving into something that's solar generator. It is a great plan for the city. Things with respect to, as I mentioned earlier, water conservation certainly is one way of addressing our needs with that. And electric houses, well, I live in one of those electric houses. And during a PSPS, there's no way to make coffee in the morning. But there's a way around that also. There's always preparation for such events. And I think our planning forward has to be more conservative with that. But I also think it's important that with the issue of inclusion in that conversation, look who's are the voices there that want to be heard.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next question is for you, Mr. Garcia. What role do you think American Canyon should play in plans for the Highway 37 Resiliency Project?
Well, yes, actually, I serve on the policy committee on that. But there's a number of options being explored. Probably the best ones was more of a short-term one, probably adding a third lane and like a zipper lane on the highway. There's a lot of environmental issues to be concerned with there. Sea level rise as well. Closed down last year in the heavy rain. God, I think it was for about a month that you couldn't get from Novato to Vallejo. The travel time between Novato and Vallejo on a Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. is about 1 hour and 40 minutes. So that's way too long. And I think we have to look at transit opportunities as well. But the problem with that is how do you get people from where they are to where they work back and forth? Rail has been suggested. That might be a very viable option with smart train type of operation that's already in Sonoma County. Rail line is currently exists in that right of way through there. So I think we have to work with all the different jurisdictions on it. We have a very small portion of that impact in terms of number of riders from American Canyon. But it impacts American Canyon because when the highway is going too long, the ride from Novato to Vallejo, then they take an alternate route and that traffic comes right through American Canyon on their way home. So yeah, we can all empathize with the impact on transportation, but it does need to be widened at some point, and it will need to be elevated with respect to sea level rise. And a lot of the environmental issues will take care of be addressed at that time.
Thank you. Mr. Joseph?
Yes, I think the important point to realize in upgrading State Route 37 is the cost estimates are measured in billions with a B instead of just the multi-millions that we may be more accustomed to. And that represents an incredible financial challenge. We're probably going to have to come to grips with the fact that some of that is going to have to be through a toll road or some type of a toll charge, which isn't going to be very popular, but maybe the only practical way of financing it. But as Leon pointed out, if we don't address it sooner rather than later, it will impact American Canyon because if 37 doesn't work, you end up taking 29 to 221 and so forth through San Pablo or through Petaluma and elsewhere. And so we will get more traffic because amazing as it may sound, Highway 29 is not as bad to commuters as 37 is. And so we are directly impacted. And one of the things we need to do as we negotiate the process is insist on getting some type of mitigation credit for the fact that we are being imposed upon as 37 isn't addressed. And I do believe rail may be an alternative. There's existing rail track that kind of goes around the perimeter of the Bay Area, and that's something that could benefit, at least in the short term, but also benefit American Canyon in terms of rail access in and of itself. So I think it's an important project, and it's going to be something we have to address.
Thank you. And Mr. Joseph, our last question will go to you first. If elected, what other actions do you plan to accomplish, and how do you plan to get them done?
Well, thank you. I think I've talked about climate change. I think we've talked about traffic. The other issue is business development and long-term fiscal health. I have given my financial background, I think in terms of long-term fiscal impacts. So I have been an advocate for a multi-year long-range financial forecasting. I think as mayor, I am automatically on the city's finance committee. And one of the things I would do is insist that we meet monthly if necessary to work through that financial forecasting model, work through the financial crisis that the COVID-19 has imposed on us, as well as develop longer-term fiscal policies to improve our long-term fiscal stability. Business development is just as important. I think we need to look at a revenue plan, basically to have a good understanding of what we want our tax base to be when we grow out, how much tourism, how much residential, retail, industrial. I think we need to identify infrastructure projects that can be funded to facilitate that, and then market our community to business positions. So the long-term financial health and building our business economy, those are the two areas I would focus on, and that's how I believe I can make it happen. Thank you.
Mr. Garcia?
Yes, an economic development plan I think is crucial. The pandemic, all the fires that we've had have had a significant impact on many communities, many folks who were unfortunately displaced from their homes. And it's impacted employment as well. So an economic development plan to me says it starts with our employers here, our small businesses and our industrial area corporations. What's the plan for the future? What do they see? What are they hearing in the economic forecasts out there? Because it has to be based on what the consumer wants and what we want to have is for American Canyon in our future. So I think that's a crucial piece of it. I think, as I mentioned before, and as Mark has mentioned as well, top goal is how to relieve traffic congestion in American Canyon. A new experiment that's been brought forward by Caltrans is metering the lights. They want to sync up the technology on a lot of the traffic lights in American Canyon, go back to the 1960s, I'm told. It's very antiquated. So we upgrade that and we sync up the lights so the traffic can move with the existing structure. We'll only know how well that works. It does work well in other cities, but there are incremental improvements that we can make that's going to help us out with this. And lastly, I want to make sure our community is taken care of, that everyone has a roof over their head, has adequate food, access to healthcare when they need it. That's very much part of the mission of the co-ed group that I've been working with. That's every family service provider in Napa County.
So we'll go ahead and start our closing remarks in reverse order with Mr. Mark Joseph to go first.
Thank you. Again, thank you for hosting this event, and I appreciate the opportunity. As I said earlier, I think my biggest selling point, if you will, is my technical background, and especially in finance and management. And that is critical in this immediate situation because the pandemic is really creating a financial crisis for the city. And someone who's balanced budgets for 30 years is just the kind of skill I think you need for the next mayor. Beyond that, I think it's time for a change, for a new kind of mayor. And I think that new mayor needs to focus on the important issues such as traffic, business development, climate change, fiscal health. And secondly, needs to be focused on anticipating problems and avoiding them, seizing opportunities. And lastly, a mayor who offers solutions. I believe in the course of this discussion that I've been able to offer you suggestions and solutions, that I have had the ability to anticipate problems and try to advocate to address them, and that I am focused on the important issues. And that is what I believe the new mayor should be in American Canyon, and that is the mayor I will be. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Garcia?
Well, I think my greatest strength is connecting with people. You know, I've been involved with my career with service for others. It's a family value that I grew up with, both with my mother and my father. My wife and I have a very large network of community that we're in contact with, largely through faith communities or schools, service organizations, chambers of commerce. We connect also in Vallejo next door on economic and social issues as well. So mine is more of a sit down, let's talk about what the issues are and how we're going to go about solving it. What do you need? How can we work on this together? What can we realistically accomplish? Let's put that in perspective. Gives me strength to know that that's well received, and I hear a lot of feedback about it. But I think if you're going to build community, you have to start with the folks. What do they want? And realistically, how can that be achieved? And what are we willing to commit to get it done? And those are the strengths I bring forward in terms of making decisions for the residents of American Canyon.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, I'd like to thank all of our attendees this evening and remind you that Election Day is November the 3rd, and your ballots will be mailed on October the 5th. So be sure and create your voting plan. Where will you put your ballot? Find out where the drop boxes are. And don't forget to fill out your ballot. Not everything needs to be filled out. Vote for what you know and for what you care about. Join us tomorrow night for the American Canyon City Council Candidate Forum. And you can find a link on our website, lwvnapa.org.